You have probably lost an argument with an animal before. Maybe a dog that would not listen. Maybe a raccoon that outsmarted your trash can. It happens to everyone. But in 1932, an entire country lost a war to a bird. Not a metaphorical war. A real one, with real soldiers, real machine guns, and a real retreat. And the enemy was a bird that cannot even fly. This is the story of the Great Emu War. And the real answer to how it happened is far stranger than you think. Picture Western Australia in the early 1930s. The Great Depression has hit hard. Farmers have been given land by the government and told to grow wheat. Many of them are veterans of the First World War. They came home from the trenches expecting peace, and instead they got drought, debt, and dust. Then the emus showed up. Emus are the second largest bird on Earth. Only the ostrich is bigger. An adult emu can stand as tall as a grown man, run at over 30 miles an hour, and eat almost anything green in front of it. Every year, tens of thousands of emus migrate inland after breeding season, searching for water and food. In 1932, their migration route ran directly through the new wheat farms. 20,000 emus arrived. Then more kept coming. They trampled fences. They ate crops down to the dirt. They opened up gaps in fencing that rabbits then poured through, causing even more damage. The farmers, many of them former soldiers, did what they knew how to do. They asked their government for weapons. Here is where the story gets strange. The Australian Minister of Defence at the time, Sir George Pearce, agreed to send actual soldiers. Not to fight another country, to fight birds. He assigned Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery to lead the operation. Meredith brought 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Newspapers of the era called it, without irony, the Emu War. You would think that a squad of trained soldiers with machine guns against a flightless bird would be an easy win. It was not. The first attempt happened in early November of 1932. Soldiers spotted a group of about 50 emus and opened fire. The guns jammed almost immediately. And here is the detail that made headlines around the world. The emus did not run in a straight, predictable line the way livestock might. They scattered. They split into small groups. Witnesses later described them moving almost like they had a plan, weaving unpredictably, making it nearly impossible to hit more than 1 or 2 birds per burst of fire. Why? Ornithologists who have studied emu behavior since then note that these birds are not simple prey animals reacting on instinct alone. Researchers observing emu flocks have documented sophisticated group movement, where individual birds break formation the moment danger appears concentrated in one direction. It is not that emus are strategizing the way a general would. It is that scattering under threat is deeply wired into how they survive predators in the wild, and it happens to look to a group of exhausted men with jammed guns, exactly like military tactics. Major Meredith later wrote in his official report that if his men had a division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it could face any army in the world. He was only half joking. The soldiers tried again. They set up an ambush near a dam, waiting for over 1,000 emus to gather to drink. But the birds split into smaller groups before the guns could be fully brought to bear, and only a handful were killed. At one point, soldiers even tried mounting a machine gun on the back of a truck to chase the birds down. The truck could not keep up. The emus outran it easily across the rough terrain, and the gunner could not aim while being thrown around in the truck bed. After about a month, the operation was quietly called off. Officially, a small number of emus had been killed. Unofficially, it was closer to a rounding error compared to the tens of thousands that remained. The military had lost, not to a rival army, not to a natural disaster, to a bird. Here is the part of the story that rarely makes the headlines. The farmers still needed help, and eventually a different solution worked far better than machine guns ever did. Bounty systems were introduced, paying local hunters for emu scalps. Better fencing, built specifically to block emus rather than rabbits, was installed across vulnerable farmland. It was slower. It was less dramatic. But it worked, because it worked with the bird's actual behavior instead of against it. That is the twist buried inside this whole ridiculous story. The Emu War was not really lost because emus are secretly brilliant tacticians outsmarting trained soldiers. It was lost because the humans involved tried to solve a biological, ecological problem with a military solution. Machine guns are built for a specific kind of target, one that stands still or moves in predictable lines, the way an opposing soldier might. Nature does not fight that way. Nature scatters, adapts, and finds the gaps. You can see the same mismatch today. Think about how people try to solve deeply human problems, like habits or addictions, or even arguments, using brute force instead of understanding. Someone tries to will themselves out of a bad habit with sheer stubbornness, the mental equivalent of a machine gun, when what actually works is understanding why the behavior exists in the first place and building a system around it, the mental equivalent of better fencing. Your brain, like the emus, does not always respond well to force. Try to suppress a craving through pure willpower alone, and it tends to scatter into a dozen smaller cravings you did not expect. Psychologists have long noted that direct suppression of a thought or urge often makes it resurface stronger, a pattern sometimes called the rebound effect. Fight the symptom head-on, and the underlying cause simply reroutes around your effort, the same way 20,000 birds rerouted around 2 machine guns. So why does this story stick with people almost a century later? Maybe because it is funny. A country losing a war to a bird is objectively hilarious. But maybe it also lingers because it is quietly humbling. It reminds you that intelligence is not always about brute strength or overwhelming firepower. Sometimes the smartest move is the one that looks the least impressive from the outside. A well-placed fence beats a machine gun. A small daily habit beats a heroic burst of willpower. Understanding beats force almost every time. The emus never knew they were making history. They were just doing what birds have done for millions of years, sensing danger, splitting apart, and surviving. The humans, for all their training and firepower, were the ones who had to learn the lesson. So the next time you feel like you're losing a battle, you should easily be winning, whether it is against a bad habit, a stubborn problem at work, or honestly, just a bird in your backyard that will not leave your garden alone. Remember Western Australia in 1932. Remember that some of the biggest defeats in history were not caused by weakness. They were caused by using the wrong kind of strength. You have probably lost an argument with an animal before. Now you know that once an entire country did too, and lost.